In this episode, I interviewed Jamie Moore from Q Golf in Cambridge. Jamie and his father Simon are a quintessential example of what it takes to turn an innovative idea into a thriving export business, selling their unique golf club into more than 60 countries so far. Their story is genuinely inspirational, from transforming a rough prototype into a patented refined product, then launching with a successful Kickstarter campaign, and now garnering millions of online views through influencers as they've continued to grow. There are some great insights here about what it takes for a New Zealand company to take on the world from day one, plus key learnings about building physical products, manufacturing in China, and scaling with influencer marketing. So let's get into it. Jamie Moore, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. This is exciting.
So Q Golf has created this innovative, fascinating product that is now selling around the world. For people who have never heard of Q Golf before, how do you describe it?
Sure. So what we manufacture and sell is the world's best all-in-one golf club. And so it's for those of you that play golf, this will be very familiar that you have a bag and it's full with all these specialty clubs that all do a specific thing. And we're taking the approach that you can still have a great time playing golf, but with this one magic club that then adjusts to turn into all the different clubs. So it goes all the way from a putter to a lob wedge, which is one of the ones that hits it up super high.
That just sounds crazy, and I've seen it in action. I've seen the video footage. Where did this idea come from?
Right. So the backstory is kind of an interesting one. It goes back quite a long time. The concept of an all-in-one golf club has actually been tried many, many times before. So the very first one was in 1894. There was a club made that could adjust and turn into all the different clubs. We've actually got one of the very, very early prototypes. And then it's been tried at various times since then, but it's always been tried in kind of a, I don't want to be denigrated, but in a amateur enthusiast sort of way. So it's never been done with modern materials, modern design to have a club that actually plays like a real golf club. So that's the approach that we've taken, is to sort of take that core concept that's been around for a long time and then applied, a bunch of modern things to it to make it actually play like a real golf club.
That sounds like there would have been some really challenging things to solve in that journey. If people have tried it multiple times before but haven't been able to do it, what did you do differently?
Yeah, so I think the thing is, a part of it is just simply in time, golf club manufacturing has advanced a whole lot. So it probably hasn't been attempted in the last 20 years or so. And just the manufacturing techniques and the way that you can design a club to make it feel easy for a beginner, friendly for a pro goes a long way, have come a long way. So I guess, there was certainly not an easy thing to design. I'm not the product guy. We'll come back to this a little bit later on, but I'm kind of the business guy. My father, Simon, is the product guy. But it certainly hasn't been an easy thing doing something essentially new.
Yeah, well, actually, let's jump into that right now. So,
Sure.
Tell us about Simon, your father. So he's the innovator. He came up with this idea.
Correct.
Tell us that backstory.
Yeah, so it's quite an interesting one. So it goes back a long way. He played golf in his youth. He's the one that got me into golf when I was a kid. And so he trained as an optometrist. And then as an optometrist, he was also into, I guess, innovative golf things. And in the 90s, he bought one of those earlier versions of an all-in-one golf club. And so he had the experience in the 90s of going out and playing a bunch of rounds with this club. And his impression at the time was sort of, this is a great concept, but it doesn't play like a real golf club. It sort of feels quite gimmicky. You have to hit it in the exact perfect spot for it to feel like you've hit a proper shot. And so it kind of, that idea then sat with him for until 2021. So for a long time, he went on and did some other things, and then ended up doing a product in golf. and then around about 2020, sort of had a moment where this was re-sparked, shall we say.
And there was a fair bit of chaos in the world in 2020, and this, I understand, this feeds into the story.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the real catalyst for this starting was in COVID times. The government was handing out these, I don't know if you remember these $5,000 grants. So I can't remember the exact rationale for them, but my understanding is that it was some sort of for entrepreneurs to pursue a business idea. And they handed out, I believe, by MB, and Simon put his hand up for one of those and got it, and used it to pursue this dormant idea that he had in the back of his mind of, could you create an all-in-one golf club that actually played like a real golf club? And so with that funding, he engaged a engineer, a fantastic engineer that we stumbled upon down in Christchurch, and he built a couple of I guess looking back at them, pretty crude prototypes, but that was the spark. It was sparked on by post-COVID funding.
Well, that's so good to hear a story of government funding that was getting dished out pretty generously back then, but it's actually turned into a business that's doing really well now.
Yeah, and this business absolutely wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. So yeah, go MB.
Nice. And so how did you get involved? Because your dad's the inventor, and somewhere along the way, you've decided to do this together.
Yeah, so my backstory with all of this is that I played golf growing up. So I got decent competitive level golf. And then I went away and did a web design business. So I had a web design business, or various web design businesses for about 15 or so years. And around COVID, I was given this prototype that Simon developed, and I went out to my local golf course, and I had this moment that I never had until then, and I haven't had since, and I describe it as kind of like a business epiphany, where I was out there with this product, and I was playing golf, just me, empty course. It was a summer night, and I was playing golf with just this one club, a couple of golf balls in my pocket. And I had this moment where I was like, this should be a thing. This absolutely should be a product. Other people need to be able to experience this. And I can't believe that this isn't a thing. And so it wasn't quite a drop everything moment, but it did set the wheels in motion for me to then sell the web design business, call up Simon and say, let's join forces. And go all in on all-in-one golf club.
That sounds like an exciting moment when you're there with a prototype, which in your mind is still was pretty crude, but actually it still gave you that moment of this has to be a thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And so now that you're both working together in the business, how do the roles work?
Well, this was actually an interesting topic right from the get-go, because we were both kind of skeptical about how it would work working with family. That's simply an unknown thing. Neither of us had done this before. And so we were both we don't want to create awkward Christmases. We want to, have a father-son relationship and a co-founder relationship. And how does that work? But it has actually been brilliant. I think we both would attest to it's been far better than we thought it would be. And I think a really key part of that is that we've, from the get-go, had very clear, I don't know if it's boundaries, but we've had areas of responsibility where Simon is sort of definitely in charge of product. So I'll defer to him on product-related things. And on the flip side, for sort of operations and business, I'm there, the yin to his yang. And we of course talk about other, things that overlap. But it's in a very collaborative, sort of pragmatic. We want to, keep this going and remain, good family members as well. So it's been really, really encouraging to see that this is possible.
Well, that sounds like a powerful combination, because there are so many New Zealand inventions that are sitting in a garage somewhere, not seeing the light of day.
Yeah, that's right. And I've talked to plenty of people like that. I think it needs both of those skill sets. So I think it would be a fairly rare blend where your mindset is, particularly if you're coming up with something brand new. It's maybe not so much if you're coming up with a brand or an incremental innovation, but for something brand new, I think you need your mind a little bit one way, and that tends to not be the same type of way that's also good at creating order and structure and to-do lists that get done and all that sort of stuff. So I'm I guess a big fan of the 2-person founding team. I think all of the things that I've done in 20 years in business have been a duo founding for that very reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so you developed it, Simon's working on it, you're working on it together. What were some of those key things from getting it from concept to something that was sellable? What were some of those difficult things to solve?
Well, I guess the first thing is just how to adjust it. So it's a fairly unique problem to have. A normal golf club, when you step back and look at it, particularly when we look at it, it's a very simple thing. It's a hunk of metal, basically. It's a formed hunk of metal that people buy for $1,000. But this is a thing that needs to have a cog in it. It needs to have some way of working out what setting you're on. It needs to be foolproof. It needs to be able to handle getting wet and muddy and someone throwing it at a tree. You know, there's lots of different situations it needs to cater to. And so I guess it was a sort of an iterative process. Simon is very strong at, I guess, mechanical things. So I think we settled on the core idea pretty early on, and that is, at a very simple level, there's a spring inside this, and you push the golf club head and the shaft together to overcome that spring, to squish the spring together, and that lets you adjust so that when you let go, it pops back in and stays on a particular setting. And that's kind of locked in place. And that's something, that particular method hadn't been done to date. And so we've got some patents and IP related to that aspect of things. Yeah.
Well done. And then so you've got this idea and you've got the prototype, you've worked it through, you've refined it, it's now a product getting ready to launch to the world. And so you chose Kickstarter as the avenue. Tell us about that.
That's right. So we needed a way to get this out in one go. We kind of decided very early on that we weren't going to do the let's launch in New Zealand and then sort of expand to Australia and kind of grow that way. So we wanted to, if you're going to do the golf industry, you got to do the world, or you got to mainly do America, but you got to do the world. And so I can't actually recall how many other options we explored, but we settled on Kickstarter pretty early on. And we were very fortunate when it comes to Kickstarter because just setting up a Kickstarter campaign doesn't bring customers. Unless you're in, this is a weird little thing here, but unless you're in like board games, like a very tiny niche, if you're in board games or gaming things, there's a whole community around there where they like find your product. But if you're outside of that, you have to BYO customers. So pretty early on when we decided to do Kickstarter, we reached out to this company called Launch Boom. No idea how we found them, but they're essentially Kickstarter consultants. And they basically said that you need to generate lots of hype so that when you click that launch button on Kickstarter, you've got momentum. You've got hundreds of people who have already put up their hand. So we did a lot of stuff before we pushed go on Kickstarter and had a big waiting list. We had people who had made reservations in order to, get a special price or get some extra perks. And so the Kickstarter was a success. We raised about 300,000 Kiwi. And that kind of gave us the kickstart to start.
I see what you did there. So that's really interesting. So you had to do a whole lot of work beforehand, and that makes sense because we think we chuck something on Kickstarter, there's a big community there, they're just going to buy it. But actually you have to bring your own customers. Yep. So what were some of those things that you did to build that hype, build that awareness beforehand?
Well, I guess our common answer to anything marketing related is Meta, so Instagram and Facebook. That's been the answer to most of how we've generated interest in this product. So we just spent a whole lot on ads. I can't remember the exact numbers, but we spent like proper 50,000, 80,000 in total on bringing eyeballs along. And that was in order to have that launch where we're actually going to have some certainty that we were going to start. Because the other thing with Kickstarter is there's no guarantee that they're even going to do the project. So the way that it works is that you put a listing on Kickstarter and you say, I'm thinking of doing this product. I wonder if customers would support that. And so customers come out of the woodwork and they say, yeah, I'd be down for that. If you end up making that product, I'd be down for that. But if you don't get enough people to support it over your kind of threshold, then it doesn't happen at all. And so there's a real momentum to Kickstarter where if you'd launched and then say 1 week later you'd only raised $3,000 out of the $150,000 that you needed in order for the project to be viable, for someone else to join in and plonk down their credit card, you're pretty you believe in it a lot in order to back something that doesn't have momentum. So that's kind of why that whole BYO audience is an absolute must-have for Kickstarter.
Yeah, I noticed on your Kickstarter campaign you had a $10,000 goal, but I imagine $10,000 was probably not going to be enough to actually launch a product. Tell us about the strategy there.
Yeah, well, I think this is also a fairly commonly done thing in Kickstarter world where you are probably going to do the project anyway. So its origins are in we're not going to do the project unless we get the funding, but the reality is that it's just a marketing tool for launching now. So we basically set this 10K limit as a bit of a just arbitrary line in the sand so that we could hit it really early on. We were always going to make this thing. We just felt that this was a really good way of starting off, having a little presence in lots of different countries. One of the things with Kickstarter is that we ended up, with those initial customers, having customers in Iceland and Norway and Nigeria and South Africa. Not great to ship to, very, very expensive to ship to. We spent a fortune on shipping in the early days, but it did mean that we had a presence in all these different countries from the get-go. And the thing that we did with Kickstarter that was recommended by Launchboom and was really, really good is we set up a private Facebook group. So all the people that signed up to get an early bird discount or price or something, they got added to this Facebook group where we would then be giving them updates and along the way and letting them, weigh in on a question about something and that became quite an active thing in the pre-launch phase.
That's interesting because you're now building community around a product that hasn't even been launched yet.
Exactly. Because the thing is, the type of person who's a very early adopter, they're probably the only person they know that is like that. Like they are a rare person. So to network with other like-minded people who are also that kind of crazy person that's buying something that doesn't exist and is probably not going to be as good as later versions, I think there's a lot of power in bringing those people together and creating a community so that they can share their ideas and get excited by this thing.
Yeah, that's great. Now, when I look at Kickstarter, I see video as being absolutely crucial. It looked like you guys did a really, really high-quality video as part of that campaign. Tell us about that as being part of your strategy.
Yeah, I mean, that was more about us going around before doing Kickstarter and looking at all the successful ones. And so there was one very obvious common thread, and that was they spent a lot of effort on the video. Because that's probably the thing that every would-be customer is going to watch the video. They can, at the very least, commit to 2 or 5 minutes to watch a video if you're going to plonk down some money for something. And so we engaged the brother of our engineer in Christchurch to come up and shoot it, and he had a drone and a bunch of other things. So it wasn't like crazy production cost, but it was. I think it met the bar of, okay, this is a serious product. These guys aren't just sort of messing around with amateur iPhone footage. And I think that again would be part of why it was a success, is that the way that you're presenting it is basically in a small way saying how legitimate you are. You know, if you're not making the effort to present it in a good way, why should we think that you're actually going to produce a product that's any good or actually produce it at all?
That's right, because there's a number of Kickstarter projects that have been funded and
Correct.
never actually made it to the customer.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of particularly the really successful ones struggle with that, because this is someone who's got an idea and then all of a sudden they've got an order for 100,000 units. They've never produced any product in their life. They're really good at pitching something or designing a cool product, but they've got no idea about, factories and QC, quality control and things like that. So, there is a little bit of a history around that.
Yeah. And so that quality of the video and being able to show that we are serious, we mean business, we've done all this work up till now. You've got those 3 to 5 minutes to actually convince them to drop 300 US on your product.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Now, when you did Kickstarter, what was interesting was you weren't called Q Golf back then.
Yeah, that's right.
So you went through a rebranding after that, but tell us about that journey.
Sure. So earlier on I mentioned a all-in-one golf club from 1894. So there was one that club was called Urquhart Golf Club, and it was named after the founder of that company, Robert Urquhart. And Simon, as a homage to him, as a little reference to him, thought that would be a great name for our company. And so we had it on the very first products. We've still got like merch and stuff with Urquhart written all over it.
And now Urquhart as well is it's actually not as easy to say as it sounds.
No. So if everyone listening, just pause this for a moment and try and guess how you spell Urquhart. Okay, you back? You're absolutely wrong.
That's right.
And this is part of the problem, is that the spelling is Urquhart. It's a Scottish word. It actually does have a semi-famous reference in that it's the castle that overlooks Loch Ness. So a lot of people that do the sort of the tourism stuff of Scotland will end up bumping into that name. But as you can imagine, it's a very difficult one for anyone to say when they see it or remember. And so we did a trade show as part of our kind of launch process. We went to PGA show, PGA Merchandise Show, which is the annual golf mecca. It's in Orlando every year. And it's basically where, if you're serious about being in the golf industry, you will be there, either with a stand or just to attend and do meetings and stuff. And so as part of our launch, around about the time of the Kickstarter, we had a stand there, and we had it all with big Urquhart signing. We spent quite a lot on the stand itself. And then we kind of got a hint at this from just talking to punters who were walking around. But Simon was interviewed by Fox, like the TV station. So they had a reporter walking around talking about some of the interesting products there. And in the 3 minutes or so segment, he spent probably half of the time talking about the name, and so reflecting on the show at the end of it, we were like, this is just getting in the way. We've got a pretty interesting thing to talk about here, and it doesn't need a side story about why the name. That's weird. Why? How do I say that? There's so much to talk about on the product itself. And so we ended up at the end of that trade show deciding to change the name.
After you've just spent this Kickstarter launch and all the signage, so that was a courageous move, but you obviously saw the evidence there to go, this is going to be a hindrance.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was absolutely the right time. There's never a good time to do a change. The best time is yesterday. So, we just sort of pulled the Band-Aid off and made that change. And fortunately, we were able to buy Q.golf, which is an important thing, and QGolf.com. had to pay decent money for those, but once we kind of had that secured, then we were kind of like, okay, now we can kind of officially be Q. And the reason for Q is that Urquhart has a Q in it, and so it was sort of like a ultimate simplification of that. And we've gone from arguably the worst name in golf to one of the simplest, most memorable names.
You have.
Simply the letter Q. And yeah.
Yeah, well done. Well done. That was an excellent move.
Yeah.
So jumping back to the Kickstarter, you have a successful Kickstarter campaign, you get all these people who are wanting to buy the product, and now you've got to manufacture it.
Yeah.
So that journey is going from a web design background, you haven't had to produce a physical product before.
That's right.
So what was that journey like?
So we fortunately had a little bit of an in there in that Simon's previous business that he did directly before this was in the golf industry. And so he had some golf contacts, and he reached out to one of the contacts that he knew had contacts in China. We very briefly looked at different places that it could be manufactured, and it just all the roads point to China for this industry. And I suspect a lot of other industries where it's not even just about the raw cost of making the product, it's the infrastructure of all the components and all the other stuff. So we get some of our components from other places, and if we made it anywhere else, we'd just be shipping little bits all around the world and trying to time all of that. Whereas keeping it all in China is just so much simpler. So we had an in. We got set up with a relationship with a factory there. And then we sort of started the process of getting prototypes.
I understand too that it's not just all of China, but there are even specialty like suburbs or cities that deal with different industries, from what I understand.
Yeah, that's right. So there's sort of like hot spots for certain industries. Our one is actually in a little bit of a far-flung city in the north, the factory that we work with. But there is certainly like a hot spot for golf where that would be the best place to have a factory. But it doesn't. I think so long as it's in the walls of China, you're pretty good.
They're pretty good at the manufacturing side.
Pretty good. Pretty strong on that, I would say.
Yeah. And so in that journey then, what have been those lessons that you've learned along the way about manufacturing in China and then shipping around the world?
Well, there's a couple of things that come to mind. So the first one is we didn't early on do well enough at optimizing the size of the thing. So the current version of the club, one thing I didn't mention when I was sort of doing my elevator spiel is that it's also got a 2-part shaft. So you can screw the two halves together, which means that this one club actually only takes up half a golf club's worth of space.
Which is brilliant. Chuck it in the suitcase for the weekend away.
Exactly right. Yeah. And so that's one of the other sort of key value things with it is that for people that are doing business trips or short-term holidays, or a lot of people will just keep it in the back of their car at all times, so that it's always golf's always possible. So we got there now after 4 or 5 years, but the very first version was single length. And then we made things worse for ourselves by putting it in this rather generously sized case and then putting that in a box. So we were shipping a lot of air around the world, and that becomes very, very expensive when you're saying yes to a customer in 40 or 50 different countries. So that would definitely be something pretty early on that I would spend a lot of time optimizing, is any square centimeter of volume you can cut away from the packaging or the product, you're going to save. It's just a magnifying effect where it only took you 15 minutes to optimize that volume, but then everything you ship is made a bit cheaper.
That's really interesting. And now with the two halves of the handle being able to screw together, that has shortened it significantly, which again makes a lot more efficiencies. Yeah,
definitely. And so shipping's all around volume. So certainly the length helps a lot, but it's also about 20% of the original box's volume. So this new one here, because it's shrunk in every dimension.
Wow.
So the cost is very, very different to how it used to be. Yeah.
with manufacturing in China as well, I've heard it said that you have to keep a close eye on quality control.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's probably the other big theme of working with China is that they're great to work with. Our contacts in our factory is great to work with. We've gone and visited them. And what we find, though, is that some of the details just slip over time. And it's a very difficult one to quality control because the thing that starts getting done wrong is a new thing that's never been done wrong before. So you end up with a sort of endless whack-a-mole where you've fixed that and, okay, we finally sorted the product. And then something else just sort of bubbles up as being a bit of an issue. So throughout the whole life, dealing with warranties has been a bit of a common thread. And then there's so much flow on from that because then you have the reputational damage where someone had a club that broke and then therefore they've embarrassed themselves in front of their friends because they were kind of vouching for this new quirky product. So they've embarrassed themselves. They maybe put a bad review on Amazon or somewhere else. There's obviously the cost and stuff of the return. And we've taken a very open arms approach when it comes to warranties and returns. So originally there was a 1-year warranty offered on all of the products, and we've just progressively extended that to 3 years. And probably shouldn't say this, but if someone wants to reach out a bit later on, then we'll also honour it then as well.
Yeah, looking after those customers who took the punt on
the
product.
Yeah.
And so that sounds so frustrating where you feel like you've got the product just right and then something changes in the manufacturing process for whatever reason, and then you have to go back around that conversation again. Yeah,
that's right. And so I think one thing that we're actually exploring at the moment, we haven't got this in place, is that there are companies specifically set up to be third-party QC, quality control. And so the idea is that, they would come in and inspect every X products that come out. So the factory does all its work, and then right at the very end, there's a process where they have someone that comes in and grabs a random one out of, let's say, every carton, and then has a big checklist of things that they need to test. So that's one way. It feels a little bit kind of like a babysitting exercise, but that's one thing that we are considering to address that at the moment.
Okay, the challenges of manufacturing.
Yeah. And coming from a digital world, it is a very painful thing because I was used to being like, oh, there was a mistake. Just push an update, type some code, and that website issue is now resolved. So yeah, it's been a big learning curve.
So in the journey, you launched the very first product, and then you've carried on innovating then with this Gen 2 version that can now be the handle split in half.
Yep.
So what's that balance between continuing to innovate and doing new products versus focusing in on just selling what you have invented?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. I think this is where having the two-founder approach is really, really powerful, because I think someone who's really good at coming up with a product will often be too enamored with the next version and spend all their time just thinking about the next version, when the reality is that having something launched now just buys you a year or 2 years to sell as much of that product as you can. And there's lots of things that need to be done and can be done in that world. So we've got the fortunate position of having the balance where Simon right now is thinking about the next generation, Gen 3, and I'm just focused on getting Gen 2 out into the world. So that's kind of the approach that we've taken here.
And you've also got a kids club as well along the way.
Yeah, that's right. So one of the things we did when we launched the second version last year, 2025, was we felt that this would be a really good product for kids, because I think kids... I've got a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I guess I know firsthand that what they want out of golf is to hit it and then to run up and hit it again. The rest of the stuff is noise. The rest of it is weight and noise, and as the dad, you end up just carrying the bag anyway. So having this simple kind of single magic club for a kid always felt like a really good opportunity. So yeah, we made a version that's specifically for kids. Yeah.
Well done. And so now exports around the world, where are you exporting to?
Yeah, so this is probably one of the parts that I'm maybe the proudest of, is that we've spent a lot of effort in making this side of things really robust. We've got a full-time logistics person based in Houston. And so we, for a very small company, we're pretty developed in this, I would say. So it's made in China, and then we ship it to, we've got sort of bases, I guess, 3PL, so third-party logistics, in the States, Netherlands, New Zealand, UK, and Japan. And then we're kind of expanding that now. So what all that means is that if you're in Spain or Canada or anywhere in the States or Australia, or, there's about 50 or 60 countries where you can buy and you can get it in a couple of days. And yeah, as a small company, being able to use 3PLs, third-party logistics providers, means that you don't need any of that weight. We don't need to go and rent a warehouse. We can just sort of piggyback on someone else's.
So you're just paying for the storage that you have there and for them to pick and ship the item. So I understand that you're shipped to between 50 and 55 countries now?
Yeah, well, it's actually gone up a little bit more since then. So we've shipped to, I think it's 62 countries in total.
Well done. So with it shipping to all of those countries, have there been any challenges with customs with going to all of those different places?
Yeah, no, that's definitely been a common thread throughout this whole journey. So we've had to learn a whole lot about how to get stuff through different countries' customs. In the early days, we kind of simplified this a little bit by just shipping from China to the States, having inventory in the States, and then shipping out to the world. And then, I'm not sure if I want to recommend this, but what the approach we took was putting it over to the customer. So when it comes to the customs complexity, this isn't anymore, but in the early days, we would basically just say, we'll ship it from the States, and then you deal with customs when it arrives on your door. And at least we're making it available to you in a country that probably wouldn't usually get, the new, things.
So good for simplicity, but not so good from a customer experience.
No. But I mean, I guess one thing we learned there is that the early adopter type of customer is quite a forgiving type of person generally, because they're willing to put their hand up and say, I want this new thing from this new company that no one's heard of. So part of that mindset is also, I'm willing to jump through a few hoops when it arrives and I need to clear it into Dubai or into some country. So we were probably, we were thinking that would become more of a problem. We'd have tons of customers pushing back and saying, I had to fill in a whole bunch of forms in order to clear it into customs. But I think it was okay. And it did mean that we could sell to a whole bunch of different countries.
And so that's the model that you started with. What have you progressed to?
Well, now the really great thing about having inventory on the ground in these different places is that we do the complexity in one big go at the start. So, for example, in the EU, we have inventory in the Netherlands, and so we do the dance with customs ourselves to get it into Netherlands, and then it's as though it's just at a retail store in the Netherlands. So for someone to order in Germany or Spain or Italy, it just sort of has no customs, essentially. It's just like an inter-country shipment. And so that same model is in most of our main markets. And it's now just our job to kind of work out what other countries are on our to-do list to have that same experience in the whole world. Because there's still, South Korea and Malaysia come to mind as places where we do get a decent amount of orders, and every single time we send one out, we're like, I'm so sorry. We know what they're going to have to do in order to get the product. And as we probably have started moving out of the very, very early adopter customer, I think the expectations will be a little bit higher about how easy the shipping process should be.
That's an interesting observation that you say about the early adopters are more forgiving. They're more they're willing to go through that.
Yep.
They're the experimental type. But yeah, as you reach more mass market, the expectation is there that it should just be taken care of for them.
And it's a beautiful thing as well, because the early adopters, I love that mindset, and I love that, that there are people like that are willing to take a punt. But what they do is they kind of like buy you time to then get set up so that you can offer a better service for that next wave of people who maybe aren't as forgiving. So that's kind of the way that I think they interplay, is that, they're kind of giving you the funding to then improve your systems for less forgiving people, perhaps. So, yeah.
And so what's your balance between, shipping direct to customer? It sounds like you've got these third-party logistics around the world, so they order on your website, you can ship directly to them, versus have you used distributors at all?
We've dabbled with distributors. So there's certain countries where we realize that we're unlikely to be able to reach end customers very well. So particularly non-English speaking countries, and therefore it's just going to be very hard for us to build any type of business in some of those markets. So a couple that come to mind, Indonesia, we've got a retailer there that has it in their stores. They've got stores all around, and they've got product in there. And so they are us in Indonesia. Same goes in Japan, where Japan is a huge golf market, but it's basically another world. Just a totally different brands, different dynamics. Golf's played differently there. Even the aesthetic of golf clubs is different. There's a lot of gold-plated things and things with an anime character on it, and just things that wouldn't work anywhere else in the world. But so we're not going to kind of guess about how to market this well there. And China's another one as well, where we've got a distributor. But we really love the direct-to-consumer model in places that we actually can do it. So in the States, we've taken mainly a direct-to-consumer. We do have what we call authorized resellers, which are places that have bought some and then on sale to their customer base. But I think as time goes on, we'll flip more to distributor and retail-based, simply because that's where most golf clubs are bought, and we can't fight how the world works. So we will end up being more skewed towards distributors and retailers. Yeah.
And what about directly through your website versus the likes of using Amazon or other platforms like that?
It's probably fluctuated over time. The website's been the one stable thing, and Amazon's sort of come and go. Amazon is a bit painful in that, well, there's a few things, but they take a big chunk. They also own the customer, so you have no direct line to the customer, so there's no follow-up. If they've got a problem, they just reach out to Amazon support, and Amazon sides with them 100% of the time. So you've got no right of being like, oh, actually, you just didn't read the instruction. You could have just read that and solved your problem. But it is a big, particularly in the States, it is a big audience base. So yeah, Amazon's sort of come and go, mainly based on our reviews on Amazon. The other thing on Amazon that a lot of people won't know is that you don't even need to have bought the product in order to review a product. So we've got 1-star reviews on Amazon from someone whose actual comment is, "This doesn't look like a very good product."
Oh,
and
how
then
frustrating!
And there's no right as a seller to take that off or even reply to it. So you end up dragging down your average based on someone who's been like, "Yeah, I don't think that's probably any good."
Oh, that's infuriating.
Yeah, it's a pretty painful thing. But let's face it, I mean, also some of those warranty problems with the product then manifest as a bad review because something goes wrong. They don't have any connection with us, so they also don't have any of that, like, I bought into this Q Golf thing. They just bought some random product on Amazon and it didn't go according to plan, so 1 star, rah, rah, rah. And so that makes a huge difference on Amazon. And so we've kind of gone through waves based on how things are looking on Amazon. And then we've dabbled with a few other platforms. So we've done a little bit on eBay. And a couple of other markets, the Amazon of that market. But the website is definitely the stable core that we have control over as well.
Exactly. That's your platform. You get to own it, all the messaging. You can reply back to people and you can do the nice warranties and look after them.
Yep.
So I'd like to switch the conversation to marketing because you started well with Kickstarter, but then it's gone on since then and you've had some real strong success. And I especially love what you've done with influencer marketing.
Sure.
So tell us about some of those success stories.
Cool. So I guess our marketing is really centered around two things, and they're both social media. One of them is paid social media, so ads. So we do a lot of advertising on Facebook and Instagram, and recently TikTok. So those have been the three things. And then on the flip side, we also do influencer marketing where we send product to people. We have like these criteria of who we would give out a free product to, or who we would give multiple product, or who we would subsidize a trip. So one of the ways that you can demonstrate this product really well is by going on a road trip somewhere. And so for someone that's got a really big audience, it's worth us saying, hey, do you want to go on a 2-day holiday, play a round of golf, we'll pay for it all. You just shoot a video that shows you having fun.
Wow.
But the golf industry is perhaps a little bit unique in that a lot of the influencers you don't pay. I think there's a lot of industries where the just 100% expectation is if you want me to talk about your skin cream, that's going to be $3,000. That's going to be $10,000 if I do a long form one. There's just sort of a going rate. The golf industry is a lot more, I guess, sort of pure. It's a sort of most of the reviews being done are more like just someone got a free product.
Well, that's great for you as a marketer, but also good for the audience because then hopefully it's going to be a genuine opinion that they hear.
That's right. Yeah, and I think it is moving more towards the pay to play, which I think you can't blame the creators who are going to all that effort and this is a way of monetizing their audience. But certainly when we started doing this, we got reviewed by the number one golf reviewer, Rick Shields. He's got 3 million subs. And that was just us giving him a product. So, yeah.
Right. So you ship him a product.
Yeah.
And then did you have any warning or anything that, hey, I'm going to make the video? No?
And I guess that's one of the downsides is that because you're not paying, they've got no obligation to share anything with you or to review it at all. So we sent him a product. And then I actually bumped into him walking around the PGA show. I think I've gone every year since we launched, and that's the one place, the whole golf industry gets together. So I saw him walking around, and I plucked up the courage to go and walk up to him and explain who I was, and then maybe a few weeks or a month later, he'd done a review of it. So that may have sparked it being back on his radar. He's done some really interesting videos where he takes you through his warehouse of products that people have sent him.
Okay.
So I guess we got quite lucky that it was featured at all because he's got shelves and shelves and shelves of just all the latest brand name clubs, all sorts of accessories of just, free product being offered to review. We do have a fortunate thing though in that we, like an all-in-one golf club to a golfer is inherently an interesting thing. More so than an incremental tweak to a driver. So if you're thinking about it from their perspective, from the influencer's perspective, they want interesting stuff because they want views, they want engagement, etc. And I think we tick the box on that in that this is interesting content, let alone product.
I watched that video, so far it's had 466,000 views, 9,000 likes, and multiple times through that video he says, the world's best adjustable golf club.
Yeah, couldn't get much better. Sort of that's the line that we would, in an ideal world, have him say. so it was pretty awesome to see. And he also played really, really well with it. I think there's also just a little bit of luck about on that particular day, is the person feeling positive? Do they happen to play well? So there was definitely a luck element to it, but he played really, really well, and so it reflected really well on the product.
And so what were the results from once that video came out? You didn't know it was coming out. He does this long form piece of going around playing with just your club. What happened?
Well, we kind of knew, we thought that it might come out in the near future after meeting him, because he said something when I met up with him about, something about it being in the pipeline, something intimating that. And then so we were kind of prepared a little bit, but we definitely didn't stock up. In hindsight, we should have stocked up with inventory, because the immediate outcome was we just sold out of everything everywhere, which is both great, but then creates a big vacuum of people are excited by a video they saw for a finite amount of time, saying, we're all sold out, join this wait list.
Dampens the excitement.
It does dampen it, yeah.
So the video came out. How long before you were sold out of everything?
Day of.
On the day?
Yeah.
What an incredible feeling.
Yeah. But I mean, part of that is, it's an amazing feeling, but part of that is just at that stage, very small company, so we just don't have much inventory sitting around. Like that's an incremental progression where you just ratchet up your amount of inventory you've got sitting around. So we probably could have sold 5 times as much on that day if we had it around. But on the flip side, you'd never want to be sitting around with a whole bunch of too much inventory. So
the tension between
100%.
And so you sell out. So now panic stations need to make some more. Need to get. So how long does that process take from when you then to get more product in stock?
About 3 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a pretty long.
That's a painful 3 months.
It's a very painful process. So we actually had some really good advice from a friend of mine, Den Nicklin, who runs. He'd be a great person on this podcast, actually. Kids Ride Shotgun. Have you seen the
No, I haven't.
bike? It's a kid's bike seat that you put on a normal mountain bike, and then it has these little handlebars.
Okay.
So the kid can sort of sit in front of you, sit on a bike seat that feels like a proper bike seat, and ride it. It's an amazing product.
Great.
And they're also selling all over the world.
Nice. We'll get them on the show.
Yeah. So he had some really good advice there of they've sold out. They've had the same sort of high publicity moments in the past. And he said that you should just take the orders, and then once the orders have been placed, reach out to them to be like, sorry, we've sold out. We've got you top of the list. We'll and then be very communicative along the process. But that works a whole lot better than actually putting up a barrier at the start of the process and saying, hey, we've sold out. We're not available. Check back in or join the wait list. Actually let the person buy, commit to it, and then put up the thing to say,
it's going to be a little while.
It's going to be a little while, because it's also coming from a positive place, because you're saying it's sold out. So as far as the person buying is concerned, that reinforces that was a great decision for me to buy.
It does.
Because, I got in on this thing. I'm, early in the wait list. So that was, we came across that idea a bit late. So we probably should have done that immediately after the video dropped. But it was probably a few weeks later on that I thought to give him a call. And that was his advice. I think it was a really good point for a spiky moment of interest and traffic in a product.
Yeah, that is good advice. As long as you can deliver within a reasonable time, keep them connected, communicate with them.
That's right. And so we did that, and I think we had pretty close to no cancellations as a result of the wait time.
So you did turn it back on after that advice a couple of weeks later.
Yeah, a couple of weeks later we just started accepting orders, doing a heartfelt, from the founders, thank you for your support. There's a bit of a wait. We'll be in touch. And then had an update sort of schedule thereafter. And yeah, like I said, pretty close to no cancellations as a result of oh no, I thought I was going to get this instantly. Which again just shows you that a certain type of early adopter customer is more forgiving than we as the people making these assume, because maybe we're not necessarily an early adopter in that many things. I'm actually probably not the type of person that would be one of the first people to buy a product.
It's interesting. I find that often, like we're often not our target market, and we have to be able to market and sell confidently, we have to realize that we're not necessarily the same as our target market.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
With your range of products, so you've got a very narrow range of products, there's a temptation, I imagine, to keep inventing and add on this and that. And so where do you find that balance? Especially you've got an inventor, Simon, the inventor, and Jamie, the business guy.
Yeah.
How do you draw that balance as you go forward?
Well, I think this is something that we set pretty early on, is that we need to stand for something. We need to be – we've got an opportunity to be the brand that's synonymous with this whole category. And that's a pretty rare thing, to be the brand for a category. And if we do things outside of that core thing of an all-in-one golf club, then we water down what we stand for. So I guess we kind of root ourselves in that idea that we need to be the all-in-one golf club brand. And so anything outside of that is just not us. And the golf market's big. There's lots of things we could be doing, but that will always be our core. I think where it will maybe change over time is that we might have more options still within that same concept. But for example, we sell quite a lot in Japan, and there they want a lighter club that's shorter. Just the demographic of who's buying it is a bit older, a bit shorter. And so we might have a special Japan edition, or we might have a woman's edition, or we might have some other way of tailoring it to a particular audience. But I think there's a real power in focus when it comes to branding.
I agree, and especially being known for that. And like you say, you've got the option to actually own this whole new category.
Yeah.
And so making sure you don't lose focus of that.
Yeah. And I think for me as the business guy, I think that's one of the most exciting things about all of this, is that opportunity to be a brand synonymous with a category. I don't think I've ever seen that as an opportunity myself personally. Like, I've never been on the ground floor when there's been something that could be that. So it feels extra exciting.
It does. That's very exciting. Well, Jamie, it's been fantastic having you on the show and having this conversation, hearing about Q Golf. Now, if there are some golfers out there who are just thinking, this sounds amazing, how do they get their hands on a Q Golf club?
So the easiest place is just to go to qgolf.com. And so like I said, it's available everywhere. And so, we've got stuff in New Zealand, so it's just shipping from within New Zealand. And
Very good. Well, we look forward to watching your journey as you grow and really dominating and owning this category worldwide.
Thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. And check out our other interviews. This show is proudly brought to you by my agency, Duo Plus. We are the digital marketing agency for businesses focused on growth. So if you're an owner or manager in a business with strong growth goals, book a free call with one of our strategists at duoplus.nz.